Yeah, so I am Michael Herman, and I am actually heavily caffeinated right now, so bear with me. For those who don't know, I'm the co-founder slash co-author of Real Python. I'm the voice behind the Discover Flask series as well. If you haven't seen that, you can go to discoverflask.com. Let's see. So I've been a backend developer in Python for about 4 years, and I've been a part of Real Python for about 1.5, about a year and a half now, I guess. And I've been mentoring those learning Python and web development for a number of years as well. And I'm also well versed in Angular, Node, and really JavaScript in general. So just with regard to mentoring, lots of people ask me about it. Why is it so important? And in my opinion, when you are learning, finding a mentor is really one of the most important tasks. Just having someone there to talk to who struggled in many of the same ways makes a huge difference. And without the mentor I had, I literally would not be here today. So that's who I am, and I would love to know who you guys are. But intros will have to wait since I don't think anyone can actually participate right now. Sorry. Like I said, we'll find a new medium for this next week. Plus, I guess it would probably take the entire session anyway to do all the intros. But please do send myself and the rest of the Real Python team an email at info@realpython.com, and definitely give us your feedback, not only about this session, but also about Real Python in general, the courses, and definitely send us a introduction if you'd like as well. And also be sure to reach out to us if you're interested in one-on-one mentoring. All right, so today we're going to be going over the basics of setting up a Flask app, and hopefully you watched the required videos that I had sent out in the various emails that I sent to you before the session, and so you have somewhat of a development environment already set up. So that includes virtual env, pip, and git, and you have a code editor like Sublime Text. And so today's tutorial is really meant for absolute beginners to Flask. And that said, if you do have more advanced Flask skills, you may not get much out of this tutorial. But since this is part of a series, definitely stick around. So you should be fairly familiar with the Python language. If you do find yourself a little bit lost with the structure or some of the terminology, you can review the first Real Python course as well as just the basic Flask chapter in the second course before the next session. So I'm going to go and share my screen now and just show you first what we're going to be building. Let me just hop back into here. Yeah, I am black and white. I don't know why, but I could have figured out how to change that. I think I look better in black and white anyway, so we're gonna go with that for now. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Okay, we get infinite regression there. There we go. Okay, so here's what we're going to be building across the next 4 sessions. So basically, this is just a single page application. This is actually a Node app, and I'm going to be converting it over to Flask. So if you search for a location, all it really does is it uses the GitHub API to pull in information about people from that area, and it just gives basic information about how many repos they have, how many followers, and they're kind of the language of choice. And so I don't know if you've heard of the app Tinder for finding love. Well, this is kind of going to be the Tinder for finding like a pair programming buddy or finding a co-founder or something like that. So you can search by city, and then you can hit try again, and then it'll just pull up somebody else, and you click enter new city and try San Francisco. So it's a basic app. There's no persistence layer, there's no database. It just connects right to the GitHub API, and then you can just search like this. We'll change the functionality around just a little bit to make it a little bit more interactive, so you can search by not only by location, but by there's Python, but by language as well. So yeah, that's what we are going to be building. So if you want, you can code right along with me. I type super slow, especially when people are watching. Or if you'd rather observe, that's fine too. Now I'll be copying and pasting every now and then to save time. So if you do follow along, you can grab the code from the GitHub repository, and I'll send a link to that afterwards. And this session is recorded, so as long as it doesn't look too bad, I don't screw up too badly, I'll make it available. And I will jump back over to this session here. So if you want to put questions in here, you can. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to get to all of your questions, but if you can also email me your questions as well, just at info@realpython.com. Okay, so let's begin. So we're just going to start with just talking about Flask for those who are not familiar with the framework. So it's a minimalistic web framework. Unlike Django, which is a full-featured framework, this takes a little bit more time, a little bit more coding to actually get an app up, since it's not pre-packaged with a number of features. Now for beginners, this is really good. Since you do have to do more, you are going to learn more. If you just throw up an app with Django, you're not going to really learn too much about what's happening beneath the scenes, underneath the hood. So it makes it difficult to customize and actually troubleshoot the app. So with Flask, you start building from the ground up. You add features as you go, and so you actually are going to learn a lot more. Plus, you have a lot of flexibility to create the app that you want, to use the features that you want. The framework does not get in your way. In other words, like sometimes that Django does. So I'm going to be using Sublime Text, and I'm also going to be using the terminal, obviously. I'm on a Mac, and if you are on a Windows machine, I will provide some direction in case some of the commands deviate from Mac. So, all right, let's just go ahead and start. Okay, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to zoom in on this. Okay, so start by creating a new directory to house this project. And you want to place this somewhere, the directory convenient, so you could place it within your documents or your desktop folders, or if you already have a real Python folder created, if you're going through the courses, then you can just place it there. So let's just go ahead and name this directory, just Flask Single Page App. So make directory. And then we just need to cd into that folder. And so now we need to activate, or actually first we need to create a virtual environment. And so to do that, you just type virtual env, and then you type the name of the directory that you want your virtual env to be stored in. That'll take just a second. Awesome, and now we can activate this by typing source env, then activate. And if you're on a Windows machine, I believe it's going to be m and then backslash scripts and then activate. I believe that's the command if you are on Windows. So let's go ahead and install Flask with pip. So pip install Flask. This will take just a second to install. Okay, cool. All right, and then you can run pip freeze. That'll show you the dependencies that are within this virtual environment. So we installed Flask, and then the rest of these, and Flask is dependent on the rest of these dependencies, so that's why it installed those. So now let's create our requirements.txt file, and that's going to be used to keep track of our project dependencies. And you'll learn more about exactly why we need to do that later on. So we do pip freeze, and we pipe it to a file called requirements.txt. And if that file doesn't exist, it's going to create it for us. So you can see here the requirements.txt file. Cool. Okay, so now let's add version control using Git. Now we want to create a gitignore file. So we can say touch.gitignore. And so in this file, we need to add the files that are in our virtual environment that we don't want to be kept in our repository. So for now, let's just go ahead and add our virtual env directory. So we can say virtual, or I'm sorry, so we can say env, and then we also don't want any .pyc files in there. And so now let's go ahead and create a commit. And this will take all the changes that we've done so far and then package them together. So we can say git add -a, place those changes into the repo. So we can say git commit -am. And between those quotes, you basically want to put a message that just talks about the changes that you made since the last time you committed. And it's a common convention to use the word initial or initial commits or first commits, something like that, for the actual first commit, since nothing really has been done. All right, cool. So that took all those changes, pretty much made a snapshot of it, and then put it into our repository. Okay, so now let's actually create our app. So first, let's create a folder that we're going to store all our files in for this Flask app. And let's just call it app. And for now, we're just going to put all the Flask code within one file. And we'll call that app.py. Actually, I forgot the CD into that app directory. So CD in there. And now I'll do touch app.py. Okay, so let me open up this file here. So we want to start by importing the Flask class from the Flask module. And that Flask module, the library, is what we installed with pip. So we can say from Flask import Flask. And now we want to create the application object. So we say app equals Flask. These are 2 underscores here. This is just a Python idiom, and we can, just a common convention, and we can talk a little bit more about that maybe next time. And so this is just an instance of the Flask class. And so next we need to set up our first route to handle web requests. And to do that, we use a decorator. And this decorator is used to join a URL to a function, which is commonly called a view function. So we can say app.route. We'll just use the main route right now. And let's just call this view function index. Now we want to just return a response. And for now, let's just return a string. We'll just use of course, hello world. And I have a little linter on here. And so now we need to set up the run method, which will actually run our application. So we do if name is equal to main. This is another Python idiom. And then we can say app.run. Then let's put debug mode on, so we'll set that to true. And so what debug mode does is this will give us a debugger that we can use in the browser if there's an error in our code. If it's a syntax error, it's not going to run, but if it's some other error that you get, like a 500 error, for example, then you can actually troubleshoot that within the browser. And we may have some time in another session to actually go over how to use that debugger, because it's really powerful. And this debug mode also gives us like an auto reload, or if you're familiar with supervisor, it does the same thing. So when you make code changes, it'll automatically update your app and then basically re-render it in the browser with those changes. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. And we'll go over this in more detail next time. So that's it. This is all we need right here. This is just obviously just a few lines of code. And so let's just go ahead and run a sanity check here just to make sure it works. Let's fire up the server. So we can say Python app.py. So we can see that it's running. And what that means is that there is a server listening on that URL, 127.0.0.1, which is also known as localhost, port 5000. So now if you open up your web browser, host 5000, just refresh this here, we can see hello world. And it rendered that text in HTML. So if we go into Chrome Developer Tools, so if we go to the Network tab, let's hit refresh. So GET request, we can see the status, we can see the response here. We got a 200 response, and then we can also see the content type or MIME type, which is HTML and text. And notice how we didn't have to actually define either of those. You can define them explicitly within the Flask app, but if you don't, Flask will automatically define those for us. So back within your terminal, let's go ahead and kill the server, and you can do that by pressing Control-C on your keyboard. Let's go ahead and commit, git add-a, and then git commit-am, and then let's just say created a Flask app. So this is taking a snapshot of our code. It's not actually taking the files. It's taking the actual changes that we have made to each individual file. Granted, if it does create a new file, if we did create a new file such as app.py since the last time we did a commit, then it is going to actually take that entire file. But it does help to think about commits in terms of actual changes that you made rather than actual files. Okay, so that took that snapshot and added it to our repository. And then when you're done doing that, go ahead and deactivate your virtual environment just using the command deactivate. And then if you want to code again, all you do is come back to your project, and actually I need to cd go out the one, and environment is here, so I can do source environment then activate, and that reactivates the virtual env. Okay, so what did we do today? So we created a project directory. We set up our development environment using virtual env, pip, and git. We installed Flask. We created our app, and then we committed our changes. So basically, we are all set up to really start developing now. So next time, we're going to look more at the actual Flask structure as well as the relationship between the client and server-side code. So we're going to start getting into the templating system that Flask has. We're going to add templates. Okay, so I have been talking for way too long, and if you do have questions, please do email me. And so let me hop back in here. I will go through these questions here in just a second. So if you have a question, definitely email me. Again, I'm at info@realpython.com. And in the future, so after these first 4 sessions, let me actually unshare this so you can actually see me. Oh, okay, that's crazy. All right. Okay, back. So in the future, after these first 4 sessions, if everyone's interested and there is enough demand, then we're definitely going to use a different environment for these sessions. I'm not a big fan of Google Hangouts, and I want it to be definitely more of an interactive experience, and it's just hard to do that in here. And granted, there is 55, 56 plus people, but I think what we'll do is we'll probably have like a environment where we'll actually deliver the lectures, like something like this. And then we'll have like a chat system set up, maybe like HipChat, where you can go into HipChat and you can interact with another member of the Real Python team and ask them questions. So that doesn't really interrupt the lecture. And then obviously you can bounce back and forth between the two as needed. So I think that might be the best medium. This is obviously just a trial, just to see people are interested. It does seem like there's plenty of interest. And maybe even next time I'll look at getting a different environment set up, because I do definitely want this to be more of an interactive experience, because I do not like talking for an hour. Again, my email is info@realpython.com. Feel free to contact me about anything, anything programming related, and I will see you next week. So if you don't have any questions, go and hop off, and I will go through the chat here and just try and address some questions.